Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to work with a very nice framework called Ibis, right? So we're trying to see how to do a simple crash course with Ibis and how to do data analysis with Ibis. So what is Ibis? So Ibis is a Python framework that allows you to be able to have one single API, right, to be able to talk to different backends. So the idea is, in case you are trying to do a data analysis step, there are different query engines and database format that you may have to talk to. It can be DB, Postgres, Oracle, and the rest, SQLite. And there's sometimes the problem that you have code in one way, and because you want to use a different database, you have to translate it to a different format, right? So that is where Ibis comes to help you. So we have just one single API. So you write your code in Ibis, and Ibis provides just one single API, and then it handles the connection to different backends, right? So that behind the scene, Ibis will generate your SQL syntax for you, so that you can talk to different forms of SQL-based database, right? Because Postgres and Oracle and BigQuery, they may have similar SQL syntax, but there may be some little bit differences, right? So Ibis simplifies it for you by having just one API, and then you can use it for either it is database, SQL, or data frame generated backend, such as like Pandas or Polars or DAX or PySpark. So let's see how to do that and how to work with it. Behind the scene, Ibis is using what is called SQL Glot to do the translation for the SQL, and also there is also Substrate, right? Substrate, something like that, that is used, right? So these are the two main tools that is used to generate the SQL query behind the scenes, so that I can talk to different backends. So let's see how to use it. So I'll go back again to my workspace, which is here, and then we see how to use it from scratch. So I'll come back here. So the idea behind Ibis is to provide a common API for data manipulation in Python, and then it's going to compile that API into different backends, right? Perfect. So what it does is that we have Ibis, the SQL syntax, to different backends, or data frame to different backends. So to install it, you can just go with pip install Ibis Framework, not Ibis, because Ibis is also another Python package, but the package you are trying to work with is called Ibis Framework, right? And that DB is a very powerful embedded analytic database engine, similar to SQLite, but very useful for data analysis. That is the default. So let's see how to work with it. So first, I've already installed it, so I'm just going to go straight away, and then let's import it. So let's load our package. It's going to be import Ibis, right? So after importing Ibis, let's see the various methods of it to know what it contains. The attributes of it is going to be DRL, then Ibis, so that we see that we have a lot of things with Ibis. So these are the various things we have. So there is Ibis expression, scalar, schema, table. You can do all of these things like query, aggregate, and the rest, right? So there are so many things, right? You can work with geodata. You can work with Pandas, as you could see. There is Pandas, there is Oracle, there is PySpark, there is Postgres, there is Polars. There are so many, right? Perfect. So let's see how to work with it. So with Ibis, you can read your data, right? So there are two formats. You can have your database format, so any database engine. So as we said, you could just connect to any of these database, or in case you have a file that you work with in Pandas or Polars, with Ibis you can also do that, right? So let's see how to read a DB format. So the first one is that you have to make a connection to the database, right? To the DB backend. So how do we do that? So simply we can just go with the particular backend that you want to use. So in our case, we will use something very simple to make it easy. So let's see. So this is going to be a reading SQLite. We are using SQLite DB because it's quite simple, and I'll just go with my connection, then Ibis, then there is connect. There is also SQLite like this, but I can just go straight away with connect, right? And then you just pass in your SQLite. So this is the engine that I want to use, and then I'll specify my path. So the path is here. It's inside my directory. Here I have my data. inside my data I have my SQL, right? But not this one, but I want to read the database. So I'll just go straight away, and then I'll go with my output.db, and that is it, right? So this double here means that, so the double is my relative, right, path to file, and then if it is absolute path, I'll just go with the, just something for you to know, right? That is absolute path. So in case you are reading and you don't find it, right? So this is it. So if I go back now, let's hide this, and then let me run it. I hope you can see. Then I'm going to run it, and now you can see that we have it here, right? So it has made a connection to it, and then we can actually check the current default backend. So backend that is using. So I go with df, I can just go with my connection dot get backend. So by default it uses DB. It's supposed to be without this. So it's supposed to be Ibis backend, not connection. So the default is using DB as a default backend, but you can also set your backend in case you want. And you just do it with ibis.set backend, right? And then you specify the backend you want to do. So let's say DB, or in case you want to use SQLite, or let's say Postgres, whatever, right? So that is how to establish a backend. So this is referring to in case you want to set a backend DB to use, right? But the default is DB, which is okay, but we are not using that one yet. We are now just connecting to our database. Now we have made a connection to it, and in case I want to see the data there, right, to list all the database right inside the connection that I made, how do I do that? So I can just go with my connection.list database, and if I go with this option, I can see all my database, right? So within my connection that I've made here, there's only one database, and the name of the database is called main, right? So in case you connected to Postgres, you have multiple database based on if you have multiple database. Okay, then I can also see, so list the tables inside the database, right? How do I do that? I just go with my connection dot list tables, right? If I go with this, now I only have table. So the name of the table is called mock data, right? And this is the table that you'll be working with. Perfect. Now let's see how to actually show. This is one way. So this lists all the tables, but in case you want to know the current connection to show the tables, just in DB, right? You can just go straight away with my connection dot table, right? If I go with tables, so this is the same thing. So either this or this, right? And you can show the database and the tables. Okay. Perfect. So we have seen how to make a connection, right, to a database. How do you work with it? How do you preview the data, right? So in case there are multiple tables, in case I want to select a table to talk with, right, talk with or analyze, how will I do that? Analyze, right? So simply just go with my df. Let's go to df. You can call that data table. Then I'll just go with as content.table. Then I'll pass in the name of the table, which was mock data. So this was the name of the table. So I'll just pass it here, right? And then now I've made a connection to it. But if I go with this, it's going to give you this information. So this is a metadata about the content of this table, which we have the ID and then their respective data types. In case I want to preview it, right, the data, I can just go straight away with my df, right, and then I can just do head. If I go with head, this, it also has a concept of lazy execution. So if I go with this, it's not going to show anything, it's still going to show this information, right? So to be able to see the data, you have to just go with my execute, right? This is similar to Python df.head, right? And instead now we have my data. So in case I want to show the first 10, so preview the first 10 rows, right, of the data, I can just go, I just put 10 here, and then you see that we have my first 10 rows, right? Very cool. So just like Pandas, right? The API is very simple. So one API to rule or talk to all of them. So this, you are not talking to Pandas, you are talking to our SQL database, right? So in case you want to know the query that is behind it, query or the SQL syntax. So I can spell syntax behind this command. How do I do that? So to see the command behind it, right, you can simply do something like this. In case I want to see the command that is behind what I'm executing all along, so that I know that, okay, this is actually translating it to SQL. All you have to do is just go with this. So just go with ibis dot to SQL, and then I'll pass in the query I created. So the query was head, then I placed, let's say, 10. Then, right, so with this option here, this is going to return the query. So select all from mock data as TO limit 10, which is actually the actual query that we use when you are writing to SQL, right? Very cool. Okay, so let's see how to, we have seen how to preview it. Now let's see some other stuff you can also do. Right, in case I want to see all the columns, how do I do that? I just go with df.columns, and if I go with this, it's going to list all the columns that are there. And in case I also want to get a description of it, I just go with df.describe, and this is also going to describe it, right? So describe, and I can do this with all the counts, with all of this method. If I go with .execute, it doesn't work, but I can just leave it like this, and then it gives us information about it. Okay, perfect. So let's move on from here, and now we have seen how to just get some of the data. How do you select? Before we do data cleaning, we want to do some basic stuff. In case I want to select, right, select columns. How do I select columns, right? So in Pandas, you would have done something like this. So df, then you just pass in the column name, right? In Pandas, this is in Pandas. In Ibis, how do I do that? So it's just going to be df, right? And then the first thing that if I go with this, this is the simplest method. We have df, and then based on my column that I had first name, so I can just do first name, right? And if I go with this, I can get the first name column, but to see the result, I just have to go with .execute, right? And then you can see all the columns. This is how to select a single column, right? Something like this. Perfect. You can also do this option here to select a column. So you can just do df.select, right? And then I'll just pass in the column name, so first name, and then I can just go with my execute, and then you can see that we have the same data above, right? Perfect. So this is another way you can also select a column. So you can do this option. You can select multiple columns here. So let's copy this and then say I want to select multiple columns. So you can just go with first name, and then you can also go again, let's say a last name. If I go with this, it's like selecting multiple columns, right? Perfect. You can do this option here, or you can also do this using this option here. So df.first name, right, just as we did in above, and then again df.last name, or you can even mix them, right? And this will also work, right? You can mix them with this, and it's still going to work. Cool. That's how to select multiple columns. How do you select multiple columns? You have seen it. Now, how do I select multiple columns and give it a limit? So I can also do this. So with a limit, in case I want to give a limit to it, I can just go with this dot limit. Then I'll just pass in, say, 3, and it's going to just give the first 3, right? Which is similar to iloc and then 3, right? Or head and 3. Very cool. Now let's go back again and let's see some other stuff. So how do you how to select columns based on a condition. So how do I do that? So we can simply do something like this. So there's df.filter, right? That is very, very powerful to use to filter your data to select columns based on a particular condition. So I'll just go with, so I want to get all the columns with the gender, where the gender is equal to male, right? If I go with this option and I go with execute, now I have all the columns that have gender as male, right? This is how to select the column based on the condition. So the condition is male. You can also chain multiple conditions to it. So I can just do multiple conditions like this. So I can do this option here. And then where, let's say, the df.job, right, is equal to, let's say, the job is equal to, yeah, social worker, something like that, right? Or programmer or something. So I go with this. I forgot to close this here. And now, so you can combine them. So get all males, where get out of the data people that are males and they are social worker, is going to give you this. So you can select based on different combinations, right? Which is very cool. Okay. In case I also want to see this query that was executed, I can just copy this and then just go with my ibis.sql or to SQL, and I'll pass in this here, and then you can see the query, so I can actually learn, right? So select from mock data male to, right, which is very easy to learn more stuff. Now, how do you, so I've selected some data, right? I've selected some stuff. How do you add to a column? So how to add new columns. So this is where we call data transformation. So how do you transform your data, right? So in case you want to transform the data to make some data cleaning, so data cleaning using Ibis, and then data transformation, right? How do we do that, right? So Mutate is a very powerful function that we can use to do transformation. So first of all, we have my data here. Let's see the data. So data.head and then dot execute. We have a salary column, and from here you can notice that we have, this is a salary, but this is not an amount, it's not a float, right? We want to convert this one to a float. So how do we do that? How do we clean this data? So what we do is that we have to split off the $sign. So how do we split and do some data cleaning to make our data more simple? We can simply do that by just going with this option here. So we have the column, so df.salary, execute to get a column. So we got all the columns. I want to replace, so there is replace. I want to replace where there is $sign with empty, right? So any place that there is $sign, I want to replace with empty. So if I go with this option here, now I see that it has changed the entire stuff here, right? But still it is a string, so I need to convert this one to a float, and to convert it I just go with cast.float, not cast.float, but cast. It is like similar to as type, then float. And if I go with this now it has converted it to float, so that now the object here is float, right? So if I take it off, it is object, right? But I want to keep it as float, right? And now it is float, but this has no change. This is just applied here, but we want to add a column with that value. So that is where mutate comes inside. So in case I want to add to a new column, I can just go with df.mutate, and I can now pass in this now to add new columns, right? Convert to numeric and save, right? So how do I do that? So first we have gotten our condition. So this is the condition that we need. So I'll use this condition here to do the conversion, and I'll pass it here. So I have to give the name of the column, so salary, let's go to salary amount, right? And then I'll pass it. So this is the name of the new column. And then I'll pass in my condition there. And if I go straight away with this option here, if I run it, you don't see anything. But if I do .execute, you see that we have a new column called salary amount, which is the new column that we have created, right? Which is cleaned. And in case I want to actually save this data, I'll have to just go back again and do this. You have to be careful when you are assigning to a new, when you are saving it, just go with df and don't bring the execute, because the moment you bring the execute, it's going to be totally different, right? It's not going to work. It's going to convert this one to the data frame instead of converting something that you can work on, right? So now if I go back here and I check and I do .head .execute, there is also interactive option that you can also use. I can just go straight away with this, right? And now the data is there, the new column is there. That is how to do some data transformation and simple data cleaning in Ibis. Okay, perfect. Now let's see how to also do some ordering, right? So in case I want to order my columns, right? How do I order them? So we have been seen how to do some data mutations. I want to first see how to do some aggregation. So we have some salary column here. I want to do aggregation. So aggregation can be something like mean, max, min, count, right? All of these aggregations. So sum, all of these, plenty stuff. So in case I want to get the total sum of the salary amount, I can just do something like this. So min, right? Or total, or get min, minimum value. I can just go with my df, then the name of the column. So I can just simply do the salary amount like this, the dot notation, dot min, and then execute. So this is one way. So if I go with this option here, I'll now be able to do an aggregate to get the particular format, right? The particular count. So I do this. Now we have the minimum amount here, and I can also do the same thing for the maximum. Which is the maximum that I want to get. So I can just go back again, which in this case, this is a max. And this works only on float, right? On floating, not on string. So if I go back again and I do the next one, will be mean, because I want to get a mean. I can just do the same thing. All of them are supported, right? Perfect. But it does not work on string. So if I go back again, I do something like this. So we have the first name. So it gave us zone. I wonder how it's executing it. If I do min, it's using alphabetical order, right? So this works because it's using the ascended order behind the scene to give the min and a max, which is quite interesting. Okay, now let's see how to, you can also combine them, right? So not just only one, in case you want to use multiple aggregate at once. So in case I want to do multiple aggregates, so how to get multiple aggregates at once, you can just go with my df.aggregate. Then I'll pass in my list, right? So I can just pass in, let's say df.salary amount, right? And I'll just pass in, so I want to get the max of it. I also want to get the df.salary amount. I want to also get the min, and I also want to get the df.salary amount. I want to get the, let's say, the mean, right? And this way, now I have it here. And in case I want to get it, I just go to execute. And I can also give it a name. So now this is the name, right? So this is the aggregate that's given to us. In case I do something like, let's say this, right? I can give it a name before executing, dot name. So there is, I think there is also name in which you can give it, let's say max, right? For this one. So you can also do something like that to give it a name. Okay, so to give it a specific name for the entire aggregate. Perfect. So that's how to do aggregates in Ibis. Of course, now let's move on from here to before we do group by, let's see how to do order by, right? Order by. So in case you want to order the data, how do you do that? So in that case, it's going to be something like I have my head dot execute. I want to order these names by the ascending or descending. I can just simply do this, and we can just do the order by, order the data by. Then I'll pass in the column that I want to order, which is the first name, right? And then I can also specify that if I want to order it, I want to specify that I want to order it by ascending order or descending order, right? So if I go with this option dot execute, now it has ordered the data, right, by the ascending order, by the first name. So this is 3442614, right? And this has been ordered. You can also, in case, I can also do this. Say order by descending order, right? And now this is ordered by descending order. So you can also order by ascending order and then descending order. Right, and you can see that it has changed it, right? Perfect. So there's a lot of things you can do with the ordering by. Let's move on to group by. So how do you group your data, right? So which is very important. So in case I want to group my data in Ibis or Imbis or Ibis, anyhow you pronounce it, it is going to be something like this. First, I'll just go with my, let's say I want to say, I want to find total number, I would say, of counts, right, by, let's say, per gender, right? So I want to group by gender, so I can just go with diff.group by, let's say, group by gender. So this is one way to do the group by. And then if I go with execute, the reason it's failing is that you have to also add an aggregate, right? Because group by mostly goes with an aggregate. So aggregate, then I'll pass in that, okay, get the gender count. And this is going to group the entire data by the gender. So we have agender, bigender, female, gender fluid, male, polygender, and the rest, right? So you can actually find the number of count by gender using this option here. And in case you want to see the code, you can also see the code of how it was done, right? By just going with this. Syntax, which is going to be my ibis.toSQL, and I'll pass in this. Now we have my SQL code, right? So select from gender, from this, right? Very nice. So if you know SQL, that is actually correct. Okay, let's see some other stuff. So we have seen how to do group by. In case I also want to do value count, which is very important for class, say, distribution or something, whatever. So it's going to be my df, right, dot gender, and I'll just go with my value. There is also value count, right? I can just do value count and then execute, right? If I go with this, we get the value count, the same thing above. We can also change it from, let's say, something like this to, I want to see for the different type of job in our data set, and you can see that this is it, right? So you can actually do value by. And since we can do value by, then that means that we can also do more, right? Okay, let's see how to do some complex query via chaining. So you can chain them, as you can see. So how do I do that? So I can just say I want to get all the, use the filter, right? Very important. Then I want to get all the gender that are female, right? And I want to group them by their job, and I want to see the aggregate, so aggregate of their salary, right? Salary amount, right? Dot max, their mean or mean, something like this. So if I go with execute now it's going to give us a table, which is very cool. So we are combining them, filter the males, group by their jobs, and then their mean salary for every category. Very cool. And in case you want to plot them, how do you do data visualization using Ibis? So it supports all the libraries, so I can just use Seaborn as SNS, and I can do some simple data visualization. Let's put it here. I can do some data visualization, so I'll import my package. Right, so there is matplotlib or care or tear Seaborn, but in case I want to just plot the value count that we had here, which as you can see we have the job and the job count. In case I want to plot this so that you see how it looks like, I can come down here and do something like this. My SNS dot my bar plot, and I'll pass in the data that I want to plot. Right, so this is it. I'll just pass in the data here, just as you would have done in Python, in Pandas. Then my S is going to be the job, and then the Y is going to be the job count. Right, this is, it should correspond to what we have here. So we have the job and the job count, right? These columns, and then I can plot it. So run it. So now it has plotted it for us, right? Which is quite interesting. I can do a cleaner plot. So let's do another clean plot. So let's do some simple clean plot like a gender plot. And I say now this is, so you can actually do all the plots, right? And it's working perfectly well. So, which is very useful, right? Okay. Then let's see some final things you can do. So you have seen all that you are doing. You have seen all the various things you can do with it. And this we are reading from the database. In case you have a file, right, a CSV file, can you also work with it? So this is reading from a CSV file, right, from files, right, in Ibis. So there is support for CSV, for Packers, for JSON, and the rest. In case I want to read from a file, so let's say df.csv, I can just go with my ibis.read CSV. Then I'll pass in my data. Then I have my data.csv, right? So you can also do the same thing. So it's not just connecting to databases. You can also do the same for CSV files. And I can just do CSV. Then I can just go to head. Let's say execute, and you have it, right? Perfect. So it doesn't matter. So this can be packet file in case you have packet or packet or pyarrow or whatever. So it can be, let's say, in case you have packet. So there is packet format. So in case you have some packet file, which I don't have. Right, you can also read it. In case you have JSON, you can also do the same thing, right, in different file format. So if I go with my DRL, my Ibis, you can see that there's so many file formats. So we can read CSV. Oh. So you can see that we can read different file formats. So there is CSV, Delta from Databricks, JSON, Packet, and the rest, right? There's also support for Snowflake, SQLite, PySpark. Perfect. Let's see some utils, right? So there are some utils in PySpark, or I said PySpark, in some of the utils say that in case we want to, so there's some stuff like you can write something in, you can convert an SQL or get the SQL, right? And then modify them and then execute them, right? You can do something like that. So you can get SQL, you modify and execute. You can also visualize. So visualize the expression in graphs, right? You can do so many things, right? etc. So let's see one of them. So in case I want to visualize it, you should have PyVis, and then you just go with this option here, and then I'll just pass in my to graph. And in case you have some query that you want to visualize, so let's say I want to have a query like this, right, which is supposed to execute and then return do that are more than that, right? In case I want to get the graph of this, I can just pass it here, and this is going to give you a graph of it, right? So this is one way. I don't have it, so I'll not execute. In case I also want to get the SQL syntax for this, we already talked about it. I can just go with my Ibis dot to SQL, right? And then you just pass in here, then this return this SQL. There is also Ibis dot SQL, right? And then the rest. And there is also, in case you have a data, right? So I have data, and I want to convert it straight away to data frame, right? To Pandas. Right, you can just do something like this. So you have my CSV file, right? And I want to convert to Pandas. I can just do to Pandas, and then this is converted to Pandas. I can now save it. So I can save this on, let's say df1, something like this. And now this is in Pandas. So if I check for the type of this, so df CSV, this is different. This is an Ibis table, but if I go with type of df1, this is now Pandas, right? And I can actually do whatever I know in Pandas from. Perfect. So that is something I wanted to share with you. I hope you have learned something. So Ibis is a very powerful library that gives you one API to be able to talk with several backends, and it generates SQL syntax and the data frame generated code syntax for you using SQL Cloud and Substrate. So thank you for watching. In case you have any questions or contribution, you can put it in the comment section below, and then see you another time. Stay blessed. Bye.